And you've spoken a little bit about being at university and a kind of growing sense of your political philosophy emerging and finding that often at odds with other students of colour and the way they were thinking about their own identity and their emerging political philosophy. Could you just say a bit more about that?
Yeah, so, as I've said, that just from very young, I've been very curious about ideas. I've been very curious about debating and discussing all of the big issues that shape society politically and socially. And, I was very excited to go to university and to do that in a much more academically and intellectually rigorous way. I mean, that's what I understood was the purpose of university, to train the next generation of leaders to think critically and to think out loud about issues that they will go on to have responsibility for in their respective fields, and contribute new knowledge and new ideas to particular subjects. And I started university, I think, pretty much at the height of the kind of 2014 to 2020, the peak of the campus free speech culture wars. Just the year after my first year of university, we voted for Brexit. We had Trump. So it was a very tumultuous time politically. And actually, whilst I had a great time at university, I learned some amazing things, and it defined me in many ways. What I was very sad about was the fact that when it came to many of these big debates in society around populism, around race and identity, there was one view that was promoted. There was one view that was legitimized as morally right and good, and that was not up for debate. And actually, there was a movement that was endorsed by my student union at the time called "Why is my curriculum white?" And as a curious, open young person who wants to hear about the kinds of ideas that are being championed by your university, I was very open to being convinced, of course. And attending many of those events, I would argue it promoted a very narrow, one-sided view of British society and its relationship with its kind of former colonial countries. So I often talk about a particular example of an event that I went to on so-called decolonizing gender, and it essentially argued that there was no sex difference or recognized gender difference in pre-colonial Africa, and that actually it was a kind of Western imperialist endeavor in order to organize people in particular societies around labor and reproduction. And to me, this seemed purely conjecture. And one of the evidence that was presented was the fact that in the Yoruba language, that many terms are not gendered. So as you have with Spanish or French, there's a feminine and a masculine way of saying things. That for Yoruba there isn't apparently the same thing, and that's a huge statement to make about pre-colonial social organization based off of that. And it became increasingly clear to me that people were working backwards from a preconceived idea that Western society was intrinsically racist, misogynistic, and dominating, and that non-Western societies are essentially primarily kind of children and victims of and lack agency, and are solely just the subject of this all-encompassing, dominating white Western force. And that was not the experiences that from my family, and it was one that I think robbed African people of their own perspectives, their own stories, their own relationships, their own histories of triumph, but also domination also. And so it was really through many of these experiences around undermining freedom of expression and free speech and and decolonizing the curriculum and issues related to that really made me develop a much more intellectually rooted view of human agency, about human freedom, and universalistic politics.
It must have been, this is pure conjecture, so feel free to push back, but it must have been, I imagine it was emotionally quite fraught as a person of colour to be coming to different conclusions than the kind of dominant intellectual temperature of the time. Did you lose friends? Did it feel difficult at times?
Oh, I lost many friends, and it was very interesting. It was such a strange experience. Another example that I refer to often is I was editing a section of the student newspaper, and I wanted to commission an article on decolonizing the curriculum. Why is my curriculum white? I mean, as a student, this is a particular movement that is shaping campus discussions. Surely we should want to ensure that we represent a range of different views. And when I tried to do that, I had a flood of emails from a minority of students, because this is not, I don't think this is representative of most students. I don't think most students care, to be honest, but there's a minority of students who accuse me of platforming white supremacy and things of that nature. And, it only emboldened me. I said, I'm going to host a free speech event on campus, and the university they tried to push back. They wanted the speakers to have a code of conduct, signed form, and all sorts of things. It ultimately did take place. And, it just happens that I'm somebody that doesn't like to be censored. But it is sad when you start to think differently in a way that actually alienates you from people that you would have thought were the kinds of people that would be your great friends. And, I think it is sad because we do live in a time where thinking politically or socially different to other people is often a deal breaker in terms of friendships and relationships. And I don't think it has to be that way. I think I love the stories of, during Christmas, the aunties and uncles around, and, the uncle saying, the most cringeworthy things, and someone else is saying something else. But at the end of the day, you all love each other. You're all a family. It's fine. But I think we've increasingly lost that that sense that behind someone's kind of political views is a genuine person that is worthy of dignity and respect. But not just that actually people come to their political views for a whole host of reasons, and that they may know something or experience something that you haven't, that has informed their perspective. And, we need to understand that. We need to discuss that. We need to talk about that. And so it is sad to me that, for a lot of young people, and what I found was that was a deal breaker in terms of being my friend, but I don't think it should be that way at all.